In our last video, we explored what equipment aka gear you will need to start making beats. In this video, I will list a few ingredients when it comes to composition that will give you a little bit more insight into making a fire beat. And I will unpack these concepts individually in a series of videos that will follow so that you can gain even more knowledge about it. But without further ado, guys, let's get into the subject. One, the rhythm section. Now, if there's one singular fact in making a dope beat, it's getting the drums banging, okay? But I'm gonna take it a step further and include the bass. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this is that I've seen a lot of novice beat makers making the mistake of only concentrating on the drums and getting that tight. Whereas, you know, the drums cannot live without the bass line. The drums and the bass collectively are called the rhythm section. And there's a reason why they are a collective. It's because they have to work together. Rhythmically, they gotta play off of each other. I mean, they just gotta talk to each other. So you gotta get them to be team players. You know what I'm saying? 2. Feeling. Music conveys mood, it conveys emotion, ambiance, atmosphere, etc., etc. And this is mostly why we listen to music, right? I mean, for instance, if you are feeling sad, you would want to listen to something that's going to cheer you up. It's going to change your mood. Or if you're frustrated from a work week, I mean, you're angry at your boss for whatever reason, you want to listen to some music that's going to either get rid of your frustration or that's going to complement your mood. You know what I'm saying? So if you're a beat maker, you have to ask yourself these questions. What is it that I want people to feel with what I'm creating, with this particular beat? What is it? Is it anger? Is it melancholy? Do I want them to be joyful, feel upbeat, you know, feel sexy or chilled or relaxed or nostalgic? I don't know, whatever. Now, I know most of the time when I sit down and create a beat, what I am or how I am feeling in that particular moment of time is what's going to influence my music. And you should definitely allow ourselves to let that feeling, you know, that natural feeling come through into our music. But there are also going to be times where focusing on a particular vibe, even if it's opposite of what you are feeling, is going to matter. And this basically becomes important when you want to make music for ads or film or anything like that, or you have an artist who has a particular topic for their music and they are looking for you to create a beat that will complement or suit the lyrical content of what they have written. I just thought that it's quite important to get to know how to do this early on, in my opinion, because that's always a plus. 3. Timbre. Now, if you're an instrumentalist, I'm pretty sure that you're familiar with this term, but just in case you are not, timbre basically has to do with the character or tone quality of a musical sound or voice, as distinct from its pitch and intensity. You still confused? Okay, I'll try and explain a little bit more simply. It basically is the difference in sound, say for instance between a guitar and a piano, playing the same note at the same volume. And this can be further manipulated. Timbre can be further manipulated when you are mixing the various aspects of the sounds in your beat. But we'll get into that. It's just the meat and potatoes of that. But in the next series of videos that I will be making about timbre and about feeling and emotion, rhythm, all of these things that we're discussing today, I'll get into the nitty-gritty of that. But in essence, timbre is what adds richness and color, you know, or flavor to your beats. 4. Texture. Now, I always like to add, extra little things into my beat that makes the sound a little bit more interesting and gives it depth. And this is where texture comes in for me. I mean, I usually use percussive instruments like shakers, because shakers are just the easiest thing. You get different kinds of shakers, whether there are rice grains in them that makes the sound smoother, gives you a smoother texture, or some of them are filled with big seed pods and that gives it a rougher texture, or it's made of wood, or you can use any kind of percussive instrument. Sometimes I even use finger noise, guitar finger noise, and it just makes the sound a little bit more interesting, in my opinion. If you want, you can also choose to, in the mix, add a little bit more texture, because you can always use things like distortion, filters, all those kinds of effects in your mix on your sounds or your instruments that will basically make the sound a little bit more interesting. 5. Melody. Now, it doesn't matter what style of beat you are making. I would say that this one is as important as number 2, which is feeling. Because this also goes together with what kind of mood you want to create with your beat. The melody, it really is what makes your beat memorable. Just think about it. I mean, how many times haven't we sung or hummed a tune or whistled a melody? Maybe it's the bass line of a track that we've heard, or it's the vocal hook line or the synth line or whatever the case might be. Generally speaking, together with the rhythmical elements, the melody drives your beat. And this is what's going to make your audience remember it. 6. Era. Now this one I find really, really important to pay attention to, because you want your sound to be current and relevant to your audience, right? For example, the way hip-hop beats used to sound back in the day, and even in the roots of trap music back in the day, it really just sounded different. Like each era sounded different. The 80s didn't sound like the 90s or the millennial era, and now it sounds completely different to what it used to be. I mean, not even boom bap sounds the same as it used to in the 90s. And that is why we have even these terms, old school and new school these days. But technology is also something that keeps changing, and there are always new ways of working. So I would encourage people to also, stay up to date with the current developments in technology, because it absolutely influences the sound of your music. Stay up to date, because the competition is just crazy out there, guys, and you want to stay on top of your game always. But having said that, I would even go further and suggest that you clue yourself up about how every single era sounds. Because say for instance, you plan on working at an ad agency, or you want to make beats for film or documentaries or whatever the case might be, and they need a particular sound. You are going to be ahead of everybody else if you know how a specific thing sounds in its era. You feel me? 7. Balance your mix. Now, learning about sound and sound engineering and how to balance your mix and how to use effects and things like reverbs and delays and drive and distortion and filters and things like compression and how sound basically works is really, really a good thing to start learning from the beginning. If you are a novice and you have never heard of any of these things, and how to detect it, how to listen for it in your mix, it is quite important that you go online, you Google a few articles about these things, or as much as you can possibly get to learn about it as early as possible. It's one of the things that makes your music sound interesting. It's what gives it a professional sound. And really, this is what all the professionals do. They know how to mix their music, because you don't want, after programming your drums, have your hat stand out like a sore thumb. You want to kind of learn how to balance your snare and your drum and your hats and all your other instruments nicely, and then how to make them sit properly in the mix. 8. Play around, experiment, see what feels good to you. Now, when I say this, please keep in mind that absolutely nothing when it comes to creativity is set in stone. We should all, as producers, feel as free as we can in the way we work, in our workflow, in our process. But at the same time, I would say what helps your process is also educating yourself, being knowledgeable about things like sound engineering, music theory, because it can only be a plus and it will get you to your end goal much quicker. Remember, nobody's an expert, so it's always a good thing to learn. It's always a good thing to grow. Be open to new things as well. And also read as much as you can on subjects like music theory, sound engineering, how others do it. Go on Google, on YouTube. Watch as many of my YouTube videos in the future as well, so that you can get clued up even more, as well as other people's YouTube videos, because there is so much knowledge out there on beat making. You will not believe it. So if you are a beginner, you are not lost. You have a lot of information at your fingertips. So with that, guys, I would say thank you so much for your time and happy beat making. I will peep you in the next.